Inshallah, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Just want to share some quick, exciting news. I have a new ebook out. It's called Marriage Advice for Single Muslims. If you have been thinking about marriage and you have questions that you need answering, such as, once I get married, will I lose my freedom? What are the red flags I should look out for? What's a halal way of finding a prospective spouse? How can I get to know someone without dating? How do I know if he is the one? If they are the type of questions that you have, or maybe you have a friend or a sister who is thinking of marriage but she needs some answers, then the book Marriage Advice for Single Muslims is the book for you. You can purchase it at smartmuslimah.com. In total, I have answered 28 questions, and these are they're the most common questions that I have been receiving from sisters when I have done the Muslim Marriage Masterclass, and then when they fill in the survey that's on my website. So take a look. It's smartmuslimah.com. I have got the link in the podcast notes as well, and I'd love to get your feedback on it on the book as well. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Farhat Amin. I'm your host. Inshallah, I hope you're doing well. If you would like to stay updated on new episodes for the podcast, then please subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to me. You can also sign up to some newsletter on smartmuslimah.com. I send out regular emails with updates about what's going on and free stuff. So that's if you're interested, inshallah. But let's get on with the topic today. So it's, I don't know if you've heard, but in Switzerland, they have banned the wearing of the burqa and niqab in public places. And they're following in the footsteps of France, Belgium and Austria. And the reason why, I'll give you a bit of the facts behind what happened. So they had a referendum, so that's the people voting. So the Swiss voters, they had a referendum because they have a form of direct democracy where laws can be passed directly by the will of the people. So just over 51% of Swiss voters, they were in favour of this initiative to ban people from covering their faces completely on the streets, in shops and restaurants. And so, but what they have said is full face veils will still be allowed to be worn inside places of prayer and for native customs, such as carnival. That sounds a bit strange, doesn't it? Native customs. Now, so that's what happened this week. Now, straight away, you must be thinking, because this is what I thought, that we're in a pandemic and everyone's being told to cover their face for health and safety reasons. So straight away, there's it doesn't make sense, does it? That, okay, you can wear face covers for health, but you can't wear a face veil. So that's the first point. To just these are things I really want you to critically think about. This is what we're doing today. Okay, now the other thing here is now the Swiss Parliament, they were actually they said they were against this. They said it's a fringe phenomenon, and instead they proposed an initiative that would force people to lift their facial coverings when asked to confirm their identity. So they said that that's what we should do. But the people, the majority, and it's a slim majority, just imagine if 2% down and it would have been a different story. Then again, maybe, I don't know what the percentage is for it to pass. I just assumed that. Okay, but you can see it was the people who thought this. And I think we do need to think as intelligent people, we know where do people get, so in a country, so in Switzerland, where were those people getting their ideas from? Yeah. They didn't, they hold a certain view about face veils and that they need to be banned. So where did they get that from? And now, what's interesting is that the Alliance of Hoteliers and Tourism Professionals, they actually said they were against it because they said, look, this burqa ban, it's going to damage our reputation and we are going to come across as an intolerant tourism destination. It's when you ban things, you are intolerant, and we are not intolerant. We are a tolerant, liberal nation. That is what Switzerland calls itself. So, okay, so you had that now. So the question is, why did, that's what we have to think about, why did 51% of the people who voted think that, yeah, we need to ban this? What made them get to that point? So now, number one, supporters of the ban argue that it also intended to stop violent street protesters and football hooligans wearing masks, and that the referendum text does not explicitly mention Islam or the words niqab or burqa. Okay, so that's what they're saying, that no, it's not just, we're not just saying this to Muslims, it's anyone who's doing, I don't know how often they have violent protests in Switzerland. That would be something to find out. So, so this is the thing. So this is, now it's very interesting, the language that was used. So now let's just look at Switzerland as a state. Now, it says it's a democratic nation. It believes in liberal values of, that you should, people have freedom of speech. So you have the freedom of religion, you have freedom of expression, and so that expression can come in your clothes. Yeah, that's a form of expression. And they are very strong on women's rights as well. These are all the things that they say. And if we look at this, these are things that they then, as Switzerland and other European nations who have banned the niqab, they then say these ideas are good, these are and these are what Muslim countries should adopt. Yeah, isn't that what they say to? They want to give those ideas to our countries and to people and to the Muslims living in those countries. They say these are the ideas you should adopt. And in particular, so I want to focus on the idea of liberal toleration. And it's interesting, the banning of the face veil in Switzerland actually reveals a gaping wound at the heart of this liberal society, and all liberal societies really, that are one by one banning the niqab. And then it's inherently, it's got racial intolerance, because it's Muslims are different races basically, and they have there's like this cultural supremacy that exists, and that they want us to adopt. If you're living in their countries, they want us to feel their dress. So this is an example. Their dress code is the best dress code. That's the dress code we should adopt. And our dress code, here it's a niqab, is not the best dress code. There's something wrong with it. Now you might be thinking, well, niqab isn't fard. You can wear it if you want. You don't have to. And it's the hijab that's okay, that's fard, obligatory. But the point is, that's really missing the point. The niqab is a symbol of Islam. Only Muslims wear niqabs, yeah? And when by banning that, what message does it send to all Muslims of all, gradients of religiosity? It's telling them that, you're a symbol of Islam is not welcome here, and we're going to ban it, yeah? And we'll look at the reasons why they give. But okay, so let's just look back at the idea of liberal toleration. Where did it come from? Now, it developed in the throes of European religious conflict in the 17th century. So now John Locke, who he's seen as the father of liberalism, he initially sought to devise a philosophy to remove conflict from the society that came from competing versions of the good life. If you look at the history, the wars that happened, religious wars that happened during the 17th century, you'll see that Christians were killing each other in the thousands because they disagreed on what is the version of the good life, a good way to live. And so he came up with this idea, and then it was adopted, but slowly it was adopted, that, okay, what we need is that we need to have a neutral state. So the government needs to be neutral, and they would act as a mediator. Yeah, they rise above the fray and they don't take sides. In theory, at least, citizens would be free to pursue their own version of what made them happy. And this approach was reaffirmed by John Stuart Mill, you may want to Google him, whose harm principle set out criterion for individuality to flourish. So in essence, what these thinkers lay down the foundations of the idea that the state could not intervene in the personal realm or indeed the public realm unless real harm resulted from an activity. Both Locke and Mill and others built the contours of a society that would preserve and widen a free and liberal polity. In this political environment, all people would flourish. So in essence, it's the idea that you can have your religion, and again, they're secular here. So you have your religion and you have your values and your ideas, and the way you interact in societies, don't allow that to get in the way of the way, living each other's lives. Don't try to, I don't try to put my ideas onto another person. I keep them to myself, but no one can then interfere in how my religious practices and my version of the good life, however, what makes me happy. So that's what liberal societies at the moment, that's what they say, don't they? That you have these freedoms, so, and you can do what you want, just don't harm, as long as you're not harming, as long as it's consensual. Now, this is what's interesting, is that you have, so there's lots of lip service given to equality amongst people, so equality amongst genders, equality amongst religions, and that everyone has these rights. But again, look, this Switzerland example shows that's not true in theory, especially when it comes to Muslims, that they don't like our culture, they don't agree with our culture, they think their values and, again, their dress code, their views on parenting, their views on gender relationships, they are better than ours. And so, and this ban, it highlights that and now someone could say, well, it was the people who decided it, not the government. But let me just read out to you that on a video on the Swiss government's website explaining the arguments in favour of a ban proposed that, this is the begin quote, religious veils like the burqa or the niqab are a symbol of oppression of women and aren't suitable to our society, end of quote. So that's something on the Swiss government's website. Now, how is that being a fair and unbiased mediator, as liberals say they are, that's what the government should be like, and that how is that allowing individual Muslim women to flourish? Yeah, so we see here on paper one thing is there, but in reality it's completely different. If you look at the posters now here's there was the main organisation that was pushing the ban on the burqa. There was a reference. It's not. I can't pronounce the name. I'm going to butcher it. Egger Kingen Committee, an association that also successfully pushed for a vote to ban the building of new minarets in 2009, and which has links to the populist right-wing Swiss People's Party. Their campaign ads showed a woman wearing a niqab and sunglasses alongside the slogan "Stop Extremism, Yes to the veil ban." So can you see that in this idea that in liberal societies, extreme racist and views are allowed to be said with the excuse of its freedom of expression, so these posters are, if you Google the poster, it's what's the word? It's dehumanizing to Muslim women, and it's a pure it's like Nazi propaganda, frankly, what they did to the Jews. That when you've got that being plastered around the towns and cities, of course that's going to affect the people, the way they're thinking. They're thinking, yeah, that these Muslims who wear a niqab, they are extremist. And as we know, if you know on your social media feed, if you like a particular YouTube video with that kind of racist right-wing content, or you like a person on Instagram, the feed will give you more of that. So then your vision and you're just hearing one voice, like an echo chamber. You're just hearing one point of view, and that view, unless you make an effort to actually listen to the other point of view. And how many are going to go on to a Swiss Muslim Association website, or go onto their feed? That doesn't happen. People just want to hear with what they agree with. So this intolerance. So what I really want to highlight here is that liberalism is intolerant of other views. It's there's an interesting thinker called Bhikkhu Parekh, who he talks about this. He says there's a narcissism in liberal thinkers and in their practice, and that if you do not conform to the dominant consensus, you do not deserve equal recognition. Now, isn't that true? That's exactly what's happening. Because our way of life, our views doesn't agree with the dominant consensus, therefore you don't get equal recognition. Your clothing doesn't need to be, your clothing should be banned, just like the burkini in France. This consensus is both intellectual and cultural. Those who refuse to embrace the values of liberal universalism and who do not represent the cultural attitudes of the dominant group have all too often been marginalised by liberals, pushed to the fringes of society. Both theory and practice, as well as informed reading of history, attest to this chauvinism that has all too often been associated with liberal ideology. So I go back to the idea of this cultural supremacy that exists. They feel they are culturally more superior than us, and therefore it's okay to ban our cultural clothing. Now, what's interesting is I searched for quite a long time looking for, where are the liberal feminists? Why are they not speaking up against this? Because you could say this is an attack on women's clothing, policing how women dress. And I haven't found anything, Emma Watson, Malala Yousafzai, who talks about women's rights, like the list goes, Germaine Greer. I'm sure you can think of others. I looked on Twitter, I searched online, silence. And so again, it's very interesting that someone could say, well, they're really busy, they've got lots on their plate that they're talking about already. But it's interesting that when it comes to people are very quick, feminists in particular, are very quick to criticise Islam, that Islam is intolerant, Islam is forcing women to wear certain clothes and it's oppressive. But isn't what's happening in Switzerland, isn't this oppressive based on their values? Isn't it the policing of women's clothing? Isn't the banning of choices being taken away from women? But absolute silence from white liberal feminists. And then we need to think, when they then feel, so they're deciding when they'll talk about what's good or bad for Muslim women, why do we even listen to them? Yeah, why do, and I would then also, there was one Muslim feminist organisation that did speak about this. Again, I am going to completely butcher their name because it's in French. Les Follards Violets. They said this is clearly an attack against the Muslim community in Switzerland. What is aimed here is to stigmatise and marginalise Muslims even more, said Ines Al-Sheikh. She's a member of that collective. And I agree with her completely. So it's exactly that. That's what they're trying to do. But then the solution isn't, what I would say here now is that my solution then wouldn't be that, and as Muslims, we don't think, well, okay, we then need to become feminists to fight this, because feminism is a liberal ideology. If please listen to previous podcasts. So that it's like I said, it's a liberal. This intolerance is liberal intolerance, and feminism is intolerant to Islamic views as well, about gender, about clothing, about marriage and relationships. So yes, I would really. This whole thing is. And it's interesting, again, it was International Women's Day. Again, the hypocrisy is not lost on any of us because it's supposed to be challenging. That's I've forgotten the hashtag about the idea of challenging things. But the silence from women's rights organisations has just been deafening. Yeah, and that should teach us a lesson that do not go to those people to expect them to defend our rights, because they'll only do it when it suits their agenda. I'm just going to end on one person who is very interesting, what I did find on Twitter. There's someone called Farah elessa. You can Google her. She's Kuwaiti, and in her bio it says public servant, liberty, justice, equality and dignity for all. But this is what she wrote on Twitter: an outdated custom mistakenly thought of as a religious edict that needs to be weeded out. However, the education route is preferred over bans. If this crisis has taught us anything, it is that humans cannot interact normally with their faces covered. So she's speaking about, so she thinks the niqab should be weeded out. Again, what kind of language is that that's being used? It's weeded out. And then the next statement is ridiculous. Humans cannot interact normally with their face covered. But isn't that what every single person is doing now, going to work with a face covering on? We're travelling, teachers are wearing it, students are wearing it. Again, you just think the hypocrisy is saying, I believe in liberty, justice, equality and dignity for all. But that's not true. You don't want, where's the dignity for Muslim women? Okay, so that's a lot, just food for thought, really. That's what was the purpose of this podcast today, because we all know, we blatantly see the hypocrisy here, but I wanted to just raise the issue of intolerant. Liberals are intolerant, and how dare they call Muslims and Islam intolerant? And we shouldn't believe that narrative, because it's just not true. And this Switzerland banning the niqab has just blatantly illustrated that. Assalamu alaikum. This episode is brought to you by farhatamin.com, a website that specialises in Islamic stickers, Muslim activity books, as well as Ramadan and Eid decorations. Wholesale and reseller inquiries are also welcome. So visit farhatamin.com today.